Yeah, Gertrude, go ahead.
Okay, fine. Thanks. You know, the issue of molecules of pharmaceuticals in the rivers down to the sea, that's such a challenge, excuse me. It's such a challenge. And one of these days, I was talking to my students on this issue, and the question came up, so how do we prevent this? So I talked of, you know, when we give pharmaceuticals, it's always a balance, risk-benefit ratio. And the studies that have shown that these molecules go into the fish and come back to us and come back to the man who will then develop boobs. What do we do? The balance. But this is, you said earlier about research proposals. This is the thought that I am having, and I gave it back to the students to say, think about how else can we dispose of pharmaceuticals other than to these big masses of water like the sea. But we are damaging the fish and damaging ourselves. That's what I can say. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's just one side of it, because I mean the pharmaceutical companies themselves, in terms of manufacturing, that's why I would have wanted to get the International Federation of Pharmaceutical Manufacturers here, because in terms of their manufacturing processes, there's a lot of effluent coming out of that. I mean, I think China is a typical example. So even before the let's call it now, the medicine is thrown away or is excreted by the patient, there's already a huge problem. Yeah, Holder, you want to say something?
Yes, Prof. I work for one of those unnamed pharmacies. Yeah, it's a little bit of an abstract concept for us working in the pharmacy there. I mean, what we do is, okay, apart from encouraging your patients as much as you can to bring stuff to you for proper disposal instead of throwing it into the toilet, for instance, like you mentioned you do.
I
so
did.
Apart from that, oh, you did. So apart from that, what we do is we the stuff goes into the tablets goes into one of those bins similar to Mr. Abe's there in the UK. And then the syrups and injectables go into different bins, and you fill in little registers where you put in the names of the medicine, the expiry date, etc. But the thing is, I don't think any of us that work in the little community farm or bigger community pharmacies know exactly what happens with this stuff as soon as it has been collected. So I've thought about it, but when you ask questions, you don't really get feedback and answers on that since you the little guy on the ground. So yeah, for me it's a little bit of an abstract concept, and it's I feel a little bit worried now that things might not be happening as it's supposed to happen.
And I mean, does your pharmacy group have a campaign where they say bring back medicines, or people just turn up with these medicines?
I don't know if it's word of mouth. I haven't seen specific campaigns on social media or I don't own a TV, so I don't know if it's on TV, but I haven't seen specific campaigns asking patients to bring back medicine to the pharmacy. So I think it's word of mouth, especially in the small community I'm from. It spreads. I heard my neighbor said bring to the pharmacy. Yes, things like that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. When I worked in Zimbabwe, thank you very much. When I worked in Zimbabwe, at some point we tried to have such a campaign, say bring back your meds, but then it's a cost to the pharmacy. Like Abe's was saying, that you end up with people who bought medicines elsewhere, and now they're bringing to your pharmacy, and you don't know what to do with it. I mean, meantime, the law in South Africa doesn't really compel people to do that. I mean, I heard Abe's was mentioning all these laws, you know, that he was citing, but we don't have that as yet. Okay, Alpheus Mpapuli, you were in another pharmacy last year. How did you have a framework?
Yes, good day, Prof, and everyone. Apologies for my background. I hope I'm audible.
No, it's fine. We can hear you.
Yes. So where I was based, when I was compiling my portfolio, collecting evidence, I came across an SOP for disposal. So with where I was, what they do is that it was mainly for any expired stock that was found in the dispensary itself. So basically they sort of like have a main warehouse where they actually send the drugs for disposal. So from that point onwards, I'm not sure at the warehouse what do they or which SOPs do they follow to dispose the medication respectively. And
Okay.
when it comes to patients, like during like dispensing, like we don't really nothing is really mentioned on how should patient dispose the drugs, or rather even maybe tell them that okay, go through the patient leaflet to see how the drug is disposed, or
Yeah.
as Lizelle said, bring back the drug to the pharmacy again. So that was my experience.
Okay. All right. Thank you. What we're going to do is we will now close. So I will give our speakers an opportunity for last words. But before I get to the speakers, is there somebody who would like to make a comment? There might be a pharmacist or maybe a researcher working outside of the countries that we've discussed. Okay, I think what we will then do is let's close this session, which has been eye-opening, at least for me at a personal level. I would think a little bit more about what I do. So I'm going to ask our speakers, starting with Zuki, your final comments, and then we will come to Dr. Skobogla, then to Prof. Patrick, and then to Abe's. So Zuki.
Thank you, Prof. I think for us, we now know what the problem is, and we have been able to connect the dots. What is important is come up with regulatory measures, but regulatory measures alone are not sufficient. I think there needs to be a will and understanding, appreciation of the problem by all stakeholders. I mean, from the manufacturers, the whole industry, life cycle and value chain, and all the players, such that then whatever it is that we come up in terms of environmental sound management of environmentally persistent pharmaceutical products does work. We are in a developing state. We may not have pharmacies in close proximity that like you have in the UK. I mean, with them, it's easily accessible, but we need to come up with take-back systems that are practical, that are working. Currently, there are proposals for a national health insurance system, but there is also negativity towards it by the industry. But we can't just sit back and wait until that comes to fruition. So we have started, for example, with pesticides in terms of compelling the industry to come up with industry waste management plans. And we are waiting for us to finish this national implementation plan for all these pollutants. And we will have to engage the industry rigorously such that we come up with measures and systems that work, not just in South Africa, because the borders are porous. We have to work with our neighbors in terms of what do we do? If it's a problem in South Africa, it's a problem in Zimbabwe or Lesotho. Similarly, vice versa. So we need to come together. And like I said, we need people to be informed and to raise the understanding that this is a problem. As long as we don't contain this and nip it in the bud, we'll have high disease burden, and we're all affected. We're all drinking the same water.
Yeah, okay.
So we need to partner. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming through and for those words. Dr. Sigobogla?
Thank you very much. I think it was a very interesting webinar. However, I would have loved to hear more from EBS, how they are, creating awareness amongst the people who seem to bring these drugs back. One of the things which I've also learned is, although as regulators work very hard to come up with those package inserts and the patient information leaflets, they are not readily available in pharmacies. And when you look at our public hospitals, we actually repackage into smaller plastic bags, and there's no information apart from take one per day or take one 3 times a day. And that's all the patient remembers. So I think awareness has to start at grassroots. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are hoping that, this starts a discussion obviously between regulators, the different regulators, and then we can move this forward. Thank you. Prof. Patrick?
Yes, if I can just comment, I think upgrading our wastewater treatment plants in South Africa would really help to solve the problem. I mean, apart from the sanitation issues that we've got in South Africa, I don't know if you've read that we've got typhoid outbreaks all over the country. But in terms of removing these compounds out of the wastewater treatment plants, we really need the wastewater treatment plants to be modernized. We've done a lot of work on advanced oxidation systems, and they work very well to degrade these systems. But at the moment, the thinking is still very old-fashioned when it comes to what the engineers are willing to install in a wastewater treatment plant. So for the simple benefit of the country, that would be one of the easiest ways to solve some of the problems that we're seeing. But I agree with you, the upstream awareness raising and issues like not repackaging stuff into a packet without warnings on it, all of that is very important too. So it's difficult to prioritize anything above another, but certainly we need to start practicing far more care than we have up to now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, over to you, Abes, and thank you, because I see you're also busy running around, dispensing and things like that. So yeah, final comments from you.
Yes, yes, you guys, I'm very proud of you being a fellow African. Your regulatory systems are doing something there. The research there, Prof, they're doing all that, extraction of these drugs and analyzing them from water bodies, which is very good. Yes, so in England, just to answer a question there that was asked, I think there is a pharmacy every 2-mile radius of a community. So there are many pharmacies. So that's an advantage here. And how people get to know that they have to return their medicines, unused medicines, to the pharmacy. It's not a regulatory line, but every bag is just good practice. So all the bags that we package our medicines in are written, just as it is written to say, keep medicines out of reach of children. It's also written on it to say, return all unused medicines to the pharmacy for disposal. So that's how they get that.
Can we have a look? Is it?
Yes. Sorry, I've used the wrong phone. It's got a very poor camera, this one, but it's just in small print. I don't know whether you'll be able to read.
Oh, yes, yeah, okay. So okay.
It's written there, so keep all medicines out of reach and sight of children, read the label carefully, return unused medicines to your pharmacist for disposal. So every bag that we use for packaging, dispensed prescriptions will have that written on it. So that's another way for regulators, if they want to look at it, to say, do we do that so that people are aware?
Yeah, or pharmacies, yes.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right. Final remarks.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a very productive afternoon. So we hope to see you in the future in one of our webinars. We do record these, as I told you, so it takes us a couple of weeks. We then edit them out and we will put them onto our playlists. So you can also just subscribe to this, or for those of you, there are people who left early or couldn't access, you can also just go to the Facebook link and be able to download any of this content actually right away without having to wait for the edited versions. So with that, I would like to thank you very much and wish you well. Thank you and goodbye.